They tried to hide it behind palace walls, but this time, even silence couldn't save the Queen. Those were the words whispered through London's corridors of power this morning, as news broke of Prince William's confirmation about Queen Camilla's fate. For months, speculation had swirled. Palace tension, disappearing schedules, an invisible queen who once ruled every royal headline. But now, what William confirmed has turned suspicion into heartbreak and the monarchy itself into a battlefield. No official bulletins, no televised address, just one brief, devastating statement. Her Majesty will not return to palace duties. The sentence echoed like a bell tolling the end of an era. Behind that calm phrasing lay a storm, one that began quietly inside Clarence House, the king's longtime residence and now the epicenter of royal fracture. Insiders describe the scene there as a household divided in whispers. The king's health has waned again, and with it, the fragile balance of loyalty within his circle. Camilla's children, Tom and Laura Parker Bowles, were said to be furious after William took charge of official communications, effectively cutting their mother out of the royal loop. One aide called it a soft ban exile in plain sight. And yet, no one, not even Catherine, whose calm presence steadies the crown, expected it to happen so soon, or so publicly. Outside the gates of Buckingham Palace, the crowd gathered in silence, unsure whether to mourn or applaud. Was this justice or cruelty dressed as protocol? Whatever the answer, one thing is clear. The crown has chosen continuity over comfort, and in doing so, it has broken a queen. Stay with me, because what happened behind those closed doors at Clarence House reveals not only why William spoke, but what the king himself could no longer say. Inside Clarence House, the air was thick with the scent of lavender polish and unease. The corridors that once echoed with Camilla's laughter now carried the sound of hurried footsteps and whispered briefings. Staff avoided eye contact. The tension was visible, like a shadow crawling along the walls. For weeks, the king's health had been described as stable, yet everyone knew what that really meant: uncertain. Behind a pair of oak doors, Prince William sat with Prime Minister Keir Starmer and the Lord Chamberlain, the monarch's chief advisor. The meeting was short but decisive. With the king unable to fulfill his schedule, William was advised to assume full administrative duties, a quiet transfer of authority that had been prepared for months. One clause in that protocol stood out. No communication shall issue in the name of the queen consort without the prince's prior review. To outsiders, it sounded procedural. Inside the palace, it was a declaration of control. At the same time, Queen Camilla remained at Mill House, her private refuge in Wiltshire. Sources close to her said she felt betrayed and humiliated, convinced that William and Anne had conspired to push her aside. Her son, Tom Parker Bowles, reportedly called journalists from his private club in Mayfair, warning that certain factions were exploiting the king's illness. Back in London, Catherine moved through the palace with the quiet precision of someone who understood the stakes. Her scheduled visits to hospitals, charities, veteran centers was no accident. Every appearance built the image of calm continuity. The monarchy was shifting, but not everyone had accepted the new order. And in the heart of Clarence House, an unspoken truth began to take root. When duty and love collide, it's always the throne that wins. The first real sign that something had fractured came not from a palace insider, but from a photographer stationed outside Buckingham Palace. His lens caught a moment that would ignite the week's firestorm. Queen Camilla's car, pulling up to the gates, was turned away. The escort didn't stop her, it redirected her, quietly but unmistakably, toward Clarence House, not the main palace. Within hours, tabloids splashed the image across their front pages under the headline, "The Queen Turned Back." Officially, it was a miscommunication. Unofficially, it was the beginning of the end. In the following days, subtle exclusions multiplied. Camilla's name disappeared from the royal diary. Her portrait was quietly removed from the palace grand corridor, replaced by one of Catherine greeting hospital volunteers. Even the Royal Foundation's press page, once dominated by Camilla's literacy campaigns, now featured William's continuity and service initiative. For those close to her, the message was unmistakable. She was being erased in real time. Inside Mill House, Camilla's frustration boiled over. Her son, Tom Parker Bowles, slammed the morning papers onto the table. "They're cutting you out," he said, and William's behind it. Camilla's daughter Laura Lopes, more cautious, urged restraint. "Mother, this isn't the press, they're telling you something. It's over." But Camilla wasn't ready to accept that. She still had allies within the household, or so she believed. A late-night call to one of the king's senior aides went unanswered. The next morning, his name was removed from her staff list. Meanwhile, William was miles away in Sandringham, meeting with advisors and preparing for what sources described as the most difficult statement of his life. Catherine, ever perceptive, cautioned him to measure every word. "This isn't about victory," she told him. "It's about mercy. The people will forgive compassion, they won't forgive cruelty." At the same time, palace communications began tightening. The BBC reported that certain ceremonial roles may be temporarily suspended due to the king's condition. Though Camilla's name wasn't mentioned, everyone knew who it meant. By the evening of November 11, the tension had reached a breaking point. Crowds began gathering outside Buckingham, laying flowers and cards not for a death, but for an ending. The public could feel the shift, even if no one dared say it aloud. And as night fell over London, a palace insider sent a single message to a reporter at the Telegraph: "There will be no return. Her Majesty has been relieved of duty." It wasn't official yet, but the writing was on the wall, and for Queen Camilla, it was written in her own silence. By the morning of November 12, London's grey skies hung heavy over Clarence House, where the heart of the royal storm now beat quietly but violently. Inside, aides moved with the precision of soldiers, measured, careful, unflinching. They'd been told one simple directive from Prince William himself: no statements, no speculation, the crown speaks only once. But outside those walls, the silence was deafening. Every newsroom in Britain had one question: where is Queen Camilla? Behind the curtains of her Wiltshire estate, Camilla sat at a grand oak desk littered with unopened letters. On the far end lay the last note she had received from King Charles, dated 2 weeks earlier. "Do what is best for the monarchy, even if it breaks you." She had read it countless times, unsure if it was an order or a warning. Meanwhile, inside Clarence House, William and Princess Anne convened what senior courtiers later called the Decisive Council. Around the polished table sat the Lord Chamberlain, 2 private secretaries, and Catherine, calm, observant, unflinching. William reviewed reports from the Privy Council and pressed his palms together. "It can't drag on," he said. "The longer we delay, the more the public fills in the blanks." Anne agreed. "It isn't just about her anymore. It's about the monarchy's credibility." At that same hour, Camilla's son, Tom Parker Bowles, had arranged a discreet meeting at a Mayfair club with 2 journalists from The Sun and Mail Online. He intended to leak what he called the truth, that his mother was being sidelined in a power grab. But word of the meeting reached palace ears before the appetizers even arrived. The next morning, Tom's royal security clearance was revoked. The quiet exile had begun. Catherine's role, as always, was less visible but more decisive. While the men argued procedure, she worked the soft power, appearing at a veterans' remembrance ceremony in Westminster, bowing her head during the moment of silence, her expression both graceful and resolute. That single image, captured by Reuters, became the photograph of the week. Side by side with the caption, "Continuity and Compassion," it told the world who now carried the moral weight of the crown. Inside Buckingham Palace, the communications team prepared William's upcoming address. Every line was refined for tone, every pause rehearsed for gravity. The message had to be clear. The monarchy was not in crisis, it was in transition. Meanwhile, in Ray Mill House, Camilla tried to make one final call to the palace. The line connected, but no one answered. The silence confirmed what the headlines already implied. Her title remained, but her authority was gone. By late afternoon, the BBC announced a special address from the Prince of Wales. Across Britain, televisions flickered to life. Pubs went silent. Even traffic seemed to slow. The sense of inevitability thickened in the air. And here, dear viewer, is where history turns not with a shout, but a whisper. William's words would soon divide the nation and define his reign. Before we go further, I'd like to ask you something. If your country faced a choice between protecting tradition or confronting corruption within power, which would you stand for? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, whether it's London, New York, or Toronto, and what you believe the crown should have done. Because what came next inside Clarence House was not politics. It was judgment. When the announcement finally came, it did not arrive with trumpets or ceremony, only the steady voice of Prince William, broadcast from Clarence House. The room behind him was dimly lit, its walls lined with portraits of monarchs who had faced crises of their own. But there was something new in his tone, the gravity of a man speaking not just for his family, but for the survival of the institution itself. My father, His Majesty the King, continues to receive the best medical care, he began, his words calm but deliberate. During this period, certain responsibilities of the crown will be overseen by the Privy Council under my direction. In respect to Her Majesty the Queen, she will not be undertaking official engagements until further notice, as the family focuses on the stability of the realm and the king's recovery. It was formal, it was polite, and yet everyone listening knew exactly what it meant. Across the nation, televisions fell silent. For the first time since her coronation, Queen Camilla's name had been publicly separated from royal duty. No outrage, no blame, just quiet removal. Within an hour, major broadcasters began their rolling analysis. The BBC's anchor summarized it perfectly. The Queen has not been dismissed, but she has been erased. Inside Ray Millhouse, Camilla watched the broadcast from her sitting room. The fire crackled faintly, but the warmth did not reach her. Her daughter Laura sat beside her, pale, holding her hand. "It's done," Laura whispered. But Camilla barely blinked. "Not yet," she said. "They've forgotten who made this family survive." Her phone rang Tom, breathless, furious. "They're shutting you out, Mother. Say something. Go on camera. The people deserve to hear your side." But even as he spoke, Camilla's private secretary entered quietly. "Ma'am," he said, "we've been asked to return our badges." Upstairs, an aide removed the royal standard from its place above the guest room window. It was a small gesture, but a devastating one. Symbols die before titles do. At Sandringham, King Charles was told of the development by Princess Anne. He nodded faintly, his hands trembling. "She will hate them for this," he murmured. But perhaps she already hated what she became. Anne didn't answer. She simply took her brother's hand and said, "You've done what peace requires." By nightfall, Clarence House released a single photograph to the press William at his desk, a candle burning beside the official seal of the monarchy. Beneath it, the caption read, "For the stability of the nation." It was a new chapter written without fanfare, a transfer of power made not by coronation but by necessity. And somewhere beyond London's glow, in a darkened country manor, the woman once called Queen whispered into the silence, "They'll miss me when the truth comes out." The question was, whose truth would history believe? By the next morning, the monarchy was no longer in crisis, it was in containment. The machinery of the crown moved swiftly to seal the rupture. Buckingham Palace issued a carefully worded communiqué. Her Majesty the Queen will undertake a period of private retreat to focus on her family and health. The Prince of Wales, with the King's full consent, will oversee the coordination of royal duties during this time. It sounded compassionate, but those who understood royal code knew it was exile dressed in courtesy. At Clarence House, the phones never stopped ringing. William met with advisors from the Privy Council and senior members of Parliament, including Prime Minister Keir Starmer, to finalize a temporary regency framework. Starmer's comment afterward was brief but telling. "It is our duty to maintain steadiness through transition." For the first time, that transition had an unmistakable face, Williams. Catherine, always the voice of restraint, suggested that the family's next steps be understated. "The people don't need more speeches," she told an aide. "They need to see quiet strength." That afternoon, she appeared with her children at a charity garden near Kensington Palace, dressed simply in navy, her smile faint but steady. The tabloids called it the image that saved the crown. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla withdrew behind the high hedges of Ray Millhouse. Friends who visited described a woman alternating between fury and despair. "They've turned my life's work into a cautionary tale," she said. "I stood by him when the world wouldn't, and now I'm the one erased." Her son Tom Parker Bowles vowed to fight back through the media, but his calls went unanswered. His own patronage at the Duchy of Cornwall was quietly revoked. Inside Sandringham, King Charles spent most of his days away from cameras. According to one insider, he received daily updates but gave no instructions. "He's not angry," the source said. "He's simply done." The monarch who once championed reform now watched the family reform itself without him. In Parliament, debate flared over whether the crown was entering an informal regency. "The Prince of Wales already acts as sovereign in all but name," remarked one MP. "Perhaps it's time the title caught up with reality." Public sentiment shifted quickly. Polls conducted by YouGov showed a 68% approval rating for William's leadership, the highest since the late Queen Elizabeth's Golden Jubilee. In contrast, Camilla's numbers plummeted to an all-time low. On social media, her name trended beside phrases like "Step aside Camilla" and "William era begins." Yet behind the triumph, palace insiders described an atmosphere of exhaustion. One aide confessed, "We've restored order, yes, but in doing so, we've buried love." That evening, William stood at a palace window overlooking the mall, watching the Union Jack ripple against the fading light. Catherine joined him, resting a hand on his shoulder. "You've done what needed doing," she said softly. William didn't answer. He was thinking of his father and of the silence now echoing from Ray Mill House. The following Sunday, under a cold November sky, Prince William stood at the cenotaph during the National Remembrance Service. The solemn sound of trumpets carried across Whitehall, mingling with the whisper of poppies pinned to black coats. Cameras captured the moment as he bowed his head not only for the fallen, but for the burdens of the living. Behind him stood Princess Catherine, serene and unflinching, and beside her, Prince George, in his first public appearance of duty. The image said what words could not. The future of the monarchy had already arrived. In contrast, hundreds of miles away at Ray Mill House, Camilla watched the same ceremony alone. The fireplace flickered, reflecting on the framed photograph of her and Charles, the last portrait taken before his illness. Her eyes lingered on it as William's voice echoed from the television. "Service is not possession. It is the act of giving without end." She turned away, whispering to no one, "You've learned your father's lines well." The nation saw renewal, but for those who looked closer, it was renewal born from rupture. The king's health had become a mirror, forcing everyone around him to confront who they truly were when duty called louder than love. And maybe that's the lesson here. Power, whether royal or ordinary, always demands a reckoning. It asks, what are you willing to lose to do what's right? Camilla lost the spotlight she fought to earn. William lost the innocence of being only a son. Charles lost his peace long before illness took it from him. Each of them carried a truth that feels painfully human, that doing what's right rarely feels righteous. As I reflect on this story, I can't help but think how history repeats itself not as tragedy or scandal, but as a quiet, unavoidable test of integrity. The crown isn't just a golden object, it's a mirror. And for every monarch who wears it, the reflection shows more of their soul than their power. Perhaps that's why this saga fascinates us, because it isn't just about kings and queens. It's about every one of us who's ever had to choose between loyalty and conscience, between the heart we follow and the duty we owe. So when we look at that photograph of William, Catherine, and George standing beneath a gray London sky, we aren't just watching a monarchy endure. We're watching a family flawed, fractured, and deeply human, learning that sometimes survival itself is the noblest act of all.